Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer. Now, you may remember that at the beginning of June, sort of at the beginning of the summer really, I was out in a hay meadow. I was talking to a wonderful couple, Michael and Jane Joseph, and they were showing me this amazing meadow, the type of meadow that we had, well, go back to the 1950s and before, was everywhere.
I was born in the early 50s and I spent my early childhood in fields like this. Since then, we've lost 98% of wildflower meadows. And I had the opportunity when I bought this place, we had a ½ acre of grass. You don't know what to do with it. And Jane had the best idea ever, which was to try and recreate what I had in my early youth.
And we had a lot of response and people were fascinated about it. I've returned because Michael and Jane are going to show us and demonstrate how you harvest a hay meadow.
Well, welcome back, Richard. Here we are. I'm actually sitting on my lawn, and as you can see, it's not sort of green stripes. It's full of colour, full of life. And the reason for coming to see me today is because we're actually going to harvest the main meadow. So we're going to go back there in a bit. But I thought I'd just show you my lawn to start with. There's things like common cats here. The purple one here is common knapweed. There's still some bird's foot trefoil, and we've got the yarrow. So there's still quite a lot of colour at this time of the year, but the main meadow is now ready for harvesting. And before we go there, I thought we'd look at some of the equipment that we need to do that. So I've set it out over there, and I'll go and describe it to you. One of the points I mentioned last time was actually you don't need acres and acres to make a meadow. If you've got a corner of your garden or a piece of your garden, like the lawn, and this lawn here I haven't cut since the middle of May. It's not a jungle, and it's been a delight. Lots of beautiful insects, bees and butterflies. The other thing you can do is build a wonderful border in your garden. So if you've got a small patch in your garden, of course you can just use a pair of shears. Something larger, you can always go to a strimmer. It's modern and noisy and horrible, but they do work. The old-fashioned way, of course, which are actually coming back into fashion now, is to use a scythe. This is an English scythe, but the easier ones to use are now Austrian scythes. And you can go on a course at the Wealden Downland Museum down near Chichester and learn how to use these. And once you've got the swing of it, they are very, very efficient, and they work really well. You use your body rather than your arms to do to get the power in the stroke, and all you're doing is you're just cutting these crescents as you go. And yeah, a man with a scythe can normally cut about 2 acres of meadow in a day. We're not going to use this today. We're going to take an easy option, which is to use the mechanical scythe here. Now this is a modern machine. I used to have an old Allen scythe, which was a nightmare. I spent hours and hours trying to start this thing, and when I did eventually get it started, I couldn't stop it. I went straight through the fence, I cut down a hedge, I was in the pond, oh dear. So now I've got this modern scythe, and I think, as you can see, it just, the teeth are about 2 inches off the surface, and that's about ideal for cutting your meadow. Once the meadow is cut, of course, we've got to rake it up, and the best tools for those are these old-fashioned rakes. I bought these at the Amberley Working Museum. They're very cheap, but they're very, very good. Some are older than others. This one's lost some teeth. They're lovely old tools. So they're the rakes we're going to be using in the meadow. And then finally, we have a good old-fashioned pitchfork. There's nothing better for picking up the hay than a pitchfork. You have to be careful, of course, because they're little bit on the dangerous side, but yes, a good old-fashioned pitchfork. Well, what a difference 7 weeks makes. Back in June, this was at its blooming best. It was a field full of daisies, flowers, everything was just a scene of beauty. It still is, but it's very, very different. So all those flowers have all been pollinated, mainly by bees, moths and other insects. Not so much by honeybees, but particularly native bees. And they've now, all those plants have set their seeds and they've matured, they're ripe, they're ready, and they're just dropping to the ground. What we're going to do today is to harvest the meadow and take it to a new site. And we can do 3 times this area at a new site. But not only are we going to take the seed to the new site, but we will be taking a lot of those insects with us too. And that will create a whole new ecosystem about 10 miles away from here. And next year it'll be a replica meadow. Before we harvest, I'm going to do a sweep of the meadow with an insect net, just to show you actually how much life there is in a meadow. And if I did the same thing in the green fields around here, you would see a remarkable difference. It's like a green desert over the hedge. Here it's another world, it's a busy world, it's full of life, and I'm going to show you that and demonstrate it now.
Well, just look at this astonishing variety of life in our meadow. I mean, and abundance of life. There's so many different types of bugs in here. We've got, well, there's the obvious ones are spiders. There's lots and lots of little crab spiders, sort of probably hundreds of thousands just here. And a lot of different beetles and bugs, shield bugs, they're very common in here. Earwigs and gosh, what else have we got here? Flies, all sorts of different flies as well, and ladybirds and all sorts of different grasshoppers. I mean, there's a huge variety of crickets and grasshoppers, and some of them make wonderful sounds as we walk through the meadow. If you look over our fence, it's just pasture and mainly one sort of grass, and you walk through there, you may see the odd thing hopping, but very, very little. And you know, I haven't even begun to talk about moths, day-flying moths, butterflies, huge variety of species. And each one is absolutely fascinating. It's a really wonderful thing to see, and I think people don't realize that this is what we all start with in the food chain. It has to be this huge abundance of insects to start to feed everything in the food chain. So yeah, it's really exciting.